Chapter 274. After the agreement, the hunchbacked old woman didn't say anything else and immediately left. I didn't stay in the shop for long. I went to check on Xiao Jin and asked Xie Chenghua and the others to take care of him. I told them to stay in the shop and not to go out. Then, I went to the hotel I had stayed in Shenzhen. Yesterday, Yang Kaichen and I had agreed to meet at noon today. When I arrived, I asked the front desk. The room that Wang Yongjun had reserved for me was still there. I didn't wait in the lobby and directly went to my room. Although I speculated that Wang Yongjun wouldn't betray me, too many people knew the address of the hotel. So, before I entered, I deliberately used my Dao Qi and Witchcraft Qi to sense the hotel. I didn't find anyone from the Metaphysics Association in the hotel, and there was nothing strange around the room. Only then did I relax and walk in. Yang Kaichen appeared on time at noon. When he saw me, he revealed a sincere smile. He walked over and punched my shoulder. He smiled and said, "I haven't heard from you for a long time." I had known him for a long time. In the beginning, because of our cultivation realms, although we had a good relationship, Yang Kaichen was always polite to me. After getting along for a long time, we became friends despite the difference in age. We called each other brothers, and we got along much better. However, because he was older, he rarely behaved in such a friendly manner. He smiled happily, but I was a little embarrassed. Last year, we had a good relationship and often talked to each other. But this year, other than when he first informed me about the Nanyang Taoist sect, I hadn't seen him again. Obviously, it wasn't that he didn't come to find me, but that I was busy with other matters and hadn't contacted him. It was only now that I came to find him because I had something to ask of him. I smiled and asked him to sit down. I didn't directly mention my purpose, but asked about his recent situation. I asked casually, but Yang Kaichen couldn't help but grin. He said to me, "Zhou Yi, did you notice any changes in me?" Changes? I raised my head to look at him and was stunned. I asked him with uncertainty, "You seem to have an extremely faint Dao Qi. Brother Yang, have you comprehended Dao Qi?" Hearing my words, Yang Kaichen couldn't hold back his smile. He laughed and said, "That's right. Not long ago, I took a look at the talisman you gave me. For some reason, I felt that I saw a layer of luster on the talisman. At that time, I didn't think much of it, but when I woke up the next morning, I inexplicably felt that my body was light. When I closed my eyes, I actually sensed the yin and yang qi in the air around me. At that time, I felt that I had touched the threshold of a geomaster. However, you also know that I'm already so old. Logically speaking, I shouldn't have such a good fortune. I didn't dare to believe it myself. It wasn't until a few days later, when I closed my eyes and looked inside myself, that I saw filaments of Dao Qi in my body. I tried to guide the Dao Qi to the scorching Yang talisman that you gave me. At that time, there was a bang and the talisman directly burned. It's funny that I've never used a talisman before. At that time, the talisman was placed on the table at my house, and it even caused a small fire. I was almost scolded to death by your sister-in-law. Although Yang Kaichen said those self-deprecating words, he was smiling so widely that his eyes couldn't be seen. It was clear that he was extremely happy. I was also very happy for him after entering the metaphysics world. Although most of the people I had interacted with were cultivators, in reality, only 1 in 100 people in the metaphysics world could embark on the path of cultivation. Most of them were ordinary geomancy masters, like Yang Kaichen. They would never be able to see the threshold of cultivation, let alone cross it. Compared to them, I was able to comprehend the yin and yang qi from the very beginning. From there, I was able to cultivate Dao Qi and smoothly enter the Earth Master realm. I was extremely lucky. In the early days, I had seen Yang Kaichen look at the talismans I had made many times with an envious expression. Although he didn't mention it, I could feel his yearning. However, he was too old, and he didn't have any hope of progressing further. I often felt sorry for him. Now, in his 40s, he had such an opportunity. It could be said that his dream had been fulfilled. I repeatedly congratulated him and took out a few more talismans. Originally, I wanted to give all of them to him, but after thinking for a while, I took back all of the pure Yang Divine talismans. I also kept one Golden Light Divine talisman and gave him the rest of the basic talismans. After all, Yang Kaichen had just embarked on the path of cultivation and was only at the realm of drawing qi like silk. These powerful talismans required a lot of Dao qi to activate. He could only activate one talisman at a time. Moreover, the value of these two talismans was extraordinary. Giving him too many wasn't necessarily a good thing. It might even bring trouble to him. Seeing these talismans, Yang Kaiken's expression slightly changed. He repeatedly refused, saying that these things were too precious and that he couldn't accept them. I tried to persuade him. These talismans are indeed valuable, but they aren't of much use to me. Big brother Yang, now that you've embarked on the path of cultivation, things are different from before. Take the metaphysics branch, for example. In the future, you'll be a member of the branch, so it's inevitable that you'll encounter things like exorcism and exorcism. With these talismans, your safety will be more guaranteed. Moreover, after embarking on the path of cultivation, it's inevitable that you'll encounter some of the metaphysics branch's shady activities. Just like that Xie Tianyu from back then, he was always looking for trouble with me. If it weren't for the fact that my strength was much higher than his, I'm afraid I would have been killed by him. Big brother Yang, you shouldn't decline. Please accept all of these talismans. After listening to me, Yang Kaiken's expression was conflicted. He clenched his teeth and thanked me before finally accepting the talismans. Next, I explained the effects of various talismans to him and specifically told him to keep the divine golden light talisman close to his body. He shouldn't use it unless it's absolutely necessary or when facing a powerful enemy. After explaining, I was worried that he would think that the talismans were too precious and wouldn't dare to use them. I also told him that if he ran out of talismans in the future, he could go to my feng shui metaphysics shop and withdraw a few. After listening, Yang Kaichen shook his head and said with a wry smile, "How can I use them all? I'm already so old. Although I've embarked on the path of cultivation, my cultivation will most likely stop here. I don't have much interest in the metaphysics branch. Those who cause trouble most likely won't treat an old man like me as an enemy. I'll only use them to protect myself. These talismans are enough. On the other hand, you've given me so many talismans. Do you have enough for yourself?" I couldn't help but laugh and shook my head. These talismans aren't of much use to me. Moreover, it's not troublesome to make them. Big brother Yang, your worries are unnecessary. Only then did Yang Kaichen nod. However, he immediately asked me curiously, what's my current realm? Although he used to be a member of the Metaphysics Association and interacted with many cultivators, there was still a layer of distance between them. He didn't know much about cultivation realms. Moreover, he had just broken through, so it was normal for him to be interested in such matters. However, I wasn't too sure about cultivation realms. I hesitated for a while before saying, I'm currently in the early stages of glorious memory. Yang Kaichen didn't know about the witchcraft energy, so he naturally didn't doubt me. His eyes revealed envy as he sighed. You're only in your early 20s, and you've already reached the same realm as President Su and the rest. I'm afraid you'll have a chance to become a celestial master in the future. I grinned. I didn't dare to say that I had a chance to become a celestial master, but using President Sue as an analogy was too inappropriate. With his talent of not even one meridian, not to mention his current glorious memory realm, I had the ability to fight him when I was in the middle stages of the pressure point realm or even the early stages. However, Yang Kaichen didn't know much about cultivation, so I didn't say much. I smiled and ended the topic before asking about serious matters. Brother Yang, have you heard any news about me in the Metaphysics Association during this period of time? Yang Kaichen was stunned. He didn't seem to understand what I meant. After thinking for a while, he said, "Back then, after the Metaphysics Exchange competition, I heard about Elder Zhao's branch in Meizhou. Someone said that you appeared in Meizhou. Then, some time ago, President Su mentioned that you represented the Metaphysics Association to participate in a competition. I'm not too sure about the details. After that, there was no other news." I nodded. The Metaphysics Association really didn't publicize this matter. Then I asked, "Brother Yang, have you heard any news about Yi Piampian from the Metaphysics Association?" Yi Piampian? Yang Kaichen didn't think about it at all this time. He immediately nodded and said, "Before I came here today, I heard from someone in the branch that the Metaphysics Association announced the appointment and removal of personnel some time ago. They removed Yi Piampian from the position of vice president and imprisoned her somewhere. It seemed that it was because she violated some ban. Zhou Yi, do you know her?" Chapter 275. That day, after Yi Piampian and Yi Maolan held each other's hands and turned into a bird of light, I fainted. I thought that they must have perished after blocking the Taoist master's attack. I didn't have much hope when I came to inquire about the news this time. Now that I heard that she might still be alive, I was both happy and sad at the same time. I was happy that she might still be alive, but I was sad that, according to Yang Kaichen, she was punished by the Metaphysics Society because of me. I didn't understand. Yi Piampian grew up with Grandpa Li, and Grandpa Li had a high position in the Metaphysics Society. Even if he was implicated by me, he should be able to protect Yi Piampian. Why did this happen? After thinking for a while, I couldn't figure it out, so I simply gave up. Grandpa Li didn't show up that day, and I didn't know his attitude. Perhaps the shaman energy was the Metaphysics Society's mortal enemy, so much so that Grandpa Li abandoned his family. I nodded and said, "I do know her. Let's not talk about this. Brother Yang, I have a favor to ask of you." Yang Kaichen said without hesitation, "With our friendship, there's no need to talk about it. Just tell me." It's very simple. Go to the Metaphysics Society and ask about Yi Piampian. Of course, if you hear someone talking about me, pay attention to it. After thinking for a while, I didn't mention the fatty. After all, he wasn't a member of the Metaphysics Society, so it was hard for news to spread. I could only find a chance to go to Kaifeng City to find out more about him. In addition, he didn't tell me about the solar eclipse that day, which was still a knot in my heart. Although I didn't suspect the fatty, I knew that there must be something wrong with it. After hearing my words, Yang Kaichen nodded, but he immediately frowned and asked me, "Zhou Yi, you have more connections in the Metaphysics Society than I do, but you asked me to find out. Did something happen to you? Did you have a feud with someone in the Metaphysics Society?" It was normal for Yang Kaichen to understand the meaning behind my words. I didn't intend to hide it from him anyway. After a slight hesitation, I nodded and said, "That's right, I had a falling out with the Metaphysics Society. I didn't have an enmity with anyone, but with the entire Metaphysics Society. Right now, the people from the Metaphysics Society are probably looking for me all over the world. Who knows, after some time, the branch might also receive a wanted notice for me." Yang Kaichen's expression instantly turned solemn as he cried out involuntarily, "How could this be?" I sighed. I can't tell you the specifics, but this is a very serious matter. Brother Yang, you're making a living in the Metaphysics Association. If you can't help me with this, I won't hold a grudge. Without waiting for me to finish, Yang Kaichen interrupted me and said angrily, "Your words are too distant. I'm just inquiring about some information. What danger could there be? You, on the other hand, have to pay attention to your safety. It's best not to stay in Shenzhen for too long. Go to a remote place to lie low until the wind blows over." I nodded with warmth in my heart. "I'm here to inquire about some information. I'll leave in a few days." Then, Yang Kaichen asked for my address. After learning about the situation, he cautiously reminded me that I couldn't trust people like Wang Yongjun and that I should be more vigilant. He also said that he would pay attention to Wang Yongjun's relationship with the Metaphysics Association. If there were any signs, he would inform me immediately. He was much more cautious than I was. After we agreed, he urged me to leave as soon as possible and not stay in the hotel for too long. Thus, the two of us parted in a hurry. Before we left the hotel, I used my Tao energy to sense the surroundings. After confirming that there were no abnormalities, I left the hotel and returned to the Feng Shui metaphysics shop. Everything was fine in the shop. I told Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda not to go out and to stay in the shop. Due to the previous two incidents, the two of them didn't suspect anything and stayed in the shop. I returned to Xiao Jin's room and sat there thinking about Yi Pianpian. Although Yang Kaiken's words were vague and his source of information wasn't necessarily reliable, there was no smoke without fire. If Yi Pianpian wasn't dead, what he had said could be true. Yi Pianpian was dismissed from her post and imprisoned in a few sentences, but no one knew what kind of danger was involved in this. Moreover, it was just as I had thought. What if it wasn't that Grandpa Li didn't care about Yi Pianpian, but that he couldn't suppress it? If it was something that Grandpa Li couldn't suppress, I could imagine the serious consequences. I wasn't worried about myself. I was only worried about Yi Pianpian. The more I thought about it, the more I hated my incompetence. I even hated the shaman energy that had brought me such a disaster and the witchcraft energy obsidian. However, it was useless to hate it. It was my own choice. Moreover, if I hadn't done that, my Tao energy would have encountered a heavenly barrier, and my strength would have stagnated. At that time, I didn't have any other choice. After thinking for a long time, I could only let out a long sigh and suppress the matter at the bottom of my heart. No matter what, Yi Pianpian's life wasn't in danger. My current strength wasn't enough. The red shadow couldn't leave the underground palace, and Xiao Jin couldn't recover his strength. I could only lie low and ensure my own safety. As for the other matters, I could only take it slow. In the next few days, I stayed in Xiao Jin's room and didn't go out. I asked Xie Chenghua to send me a large batch of talisman-making tools and focused on making the Heavenly Deception Talismans. The Heavenly Deception Talismans were a set of purple talismans with extraordinary power. However, it was also very complicated to make. The entire set of Heavenly Deception Talismans required 36 talismans in total. Among them, the small deception talisman that I had made before was the simplest type. It required a total of 8 talismans. Naturally, this wasn't a problem. In addition, there were 27 other talismans. All of them were yellow talismans. With my current Tao energy cultivation, it shouldn't be too troublesome to make them. However, the last talisman, which was also the core talisman of the set of Heavenly Deception Talismans, was a red talisman. The red talisman was a talisman that only those in the glory of knowledge realm had the right to make, as it required the power of the stars to be attached to it. Even though I had the power of the glory of knowledge, it was the glory of witchcraft, and the Tao energy in my body was still at the complete acupoint ceiling realm. Therefore, I needed to understand one thing. Could witchcraft talismans be made with witchcraft chi? Logically, even though the two had different natures, they were both a type of power that was obtained through cultivation. Furthermore, in terms of power, witchcraft chi was even stronger than Tao energy, so it should be possible to use it to make talismans. Even if it was a red talisman, my witchcraft chi in the glory of knowledge realm also contained the power of the stars. The talismans that I made should also be red talismans. The theory was correct, but I didn't dare to make any guarantees before putting it into practice. This was also the reason why I didn't make any promises to the hunchbacked old lady yesterday. In the next few days, I didn't leave the house. I used 4 days to finish making the other 35 talismans. Then, I rested for 2 days to adjust my condition. Then, I took out the red talisman paper that Xie Changhua had spent a lot of effort to buy. I circulated my witchcraft chi and started to make the last talisman. Witchcraft chi was different from Tao energy. Tao energy was calm, while witchcraft chi was more active. It was also more troublesome to control. Moreover, the most important thing was that all talismans had cinnabar as ink. Witchcraft chi and cinnabar didn't match at all. After I used witchcraft chi to soak the cinnabar, the originally dark red cinnabar would lose its color and become devoid of any spiritual energy. I didn't even need to try it to know that it was useless. After thinking for a while, I found Xie Changhua and Lu Chuanda to discuss it. Of course, I didn't mention the matter of using witchcraft chi to make talismans. I just talked about the things that corresponded to cinnabar. Although Xie Changhua and Lu Chuanda weren't as strong as me, their knowledge wasn't inferior to mine. After a short discussion, the two of them quickly came up with their own opinions. Chapter 276. Death jade looked similar to white jade on the surface, but it didn't have the white luster of white jade. Its color was much duller, and there seemed to be a layer of pale mist floating inside. Overall, it looked more like white marble. The death jades Xie Changhua brought back were small pieces the size of a ring. They weighed a lot, around 2 to 3 caddies. I picked up a small piece and carefully felt it. It was just as Xie Changhua had said. The death jade had thick yin energy, and it was cold to the touch. However, it made people restless and didn't feel comfortable. I put the death jade away and looked at the 2 paint cans in Lu Chuanda's hands. The 2 small buckets were covered with black cloths. From a distance, I could smell a faint stench. It should be the sky sunflower blood. I forced a smile and asked Lu Chuanda, although the sky sunflower blood is common, it's not easy to find. Brother Lu, why did you find so much? Lu Chuanda shook his head. Not much, not much. These 2 buckets are only half filled. Even if you add them up, it's not enough to fill 1 bucket. I was puzzled and asked, then why are they stored separately? Is there a difference between the sky sunflower blood? Lu Chuanda nodded and smiled. Of course, there's a difference. The Yellow Emperor's Canon of Internal Medicine says that a woman takes 14 days to become a sunflower and 20 days to give birth to a purple carriage. Childbirth is a process where yang energy gives birth to yin energy. The first sunflower and the second sunflower are different. These 2 buckets are filled with first sunflower blood and last sunflower blood. After listening to him, I understood. Metaphysics wasn't a superstition. It was a kind of science, similar to pharmacology. The different ingredients in different medicines, as well as the concentration of those ingredients, would affect the final effect of the medicine. Lu Chuanda used to be the president of a branch. Although his strength wasn't good, he was a feng shui master who had embarked on the path of cultivation. He was a great master and his knowledge of the basics was more solid than mine. I reached out to receive them and thanked them. Then, I returned to the room on the second floor, where Xiao Jin and I were staying. With these two things in hand, the next step was to explore. However, when I was about to use my spirit energy to make talismans, I found something else. The tools used to create talismans were very simple. Apart from the materials used to condense qi, there were also two other things: talisman paper and talisman brush. The talisman paper itself was only a carrier, and no matter if it was Taoist qi or shaman qi, both of them could be carried, so there was naturally no need to worry too much. However, the talisman brush was different. The Taoist qi was used to make talismans using the weasel hair brush. The main purpose was to use the weasel hair brush's spirituality and its ability to break evil spirits. But now, regardless of whether it was the sky sunflower jade or the death jade, as long as it contained yin qi, it would be accompanied by evil spirits. If the weasel hair brush was used again, there was no need to start making talismans. The weasel hair brush and the sky sunflower death jade would clash first. By then, it could only achieve the effect of twice the effort with half the result. After pondering for a while, I remembered that the death scripture had a relatively uncommon talisman brush called the fox armpit brush. Fox armpit, as the name suggested, was the armpit hair of a fox. Foxes were yin in nature, and their armpit hair was also yin in nature compared to the rest of their body hair. Using fox armpit hair to make a pen would naturally not have to worry about the risk of conflicting with the dead sunflower jade. Moreover, fox hair itself was more spiritual than wolf hair, and it was originally used to make some unorthodox yin talismans. At this time, if it was used to make talismans with witchcraft qi, the effect would surely be better. Unfortunately, the fox armpit brush was extremely rare and precious. There was an old saying that the skin of 1,000 sheep wasn't as good as the armpit of a fox. From this, one could see how precious the fox armpit brush was. Although a pen didn't need much fur, how many armpit hairs did a fox have? If one wanted to collect the fur needed to make a pen, they would need dozens of foxes. Moreover, they couldn't be ordinary foxes. They had to have a strong body and strong intelligence. If the requirements were stricter, they would have to find a female fox. This time, I was in a dilemma. I had read about this kind of talisman brush in the death scripture. Ever since I had stepped on the path of cultivation, I had never heard of this kind of brush. How could I find one in such a short time? Feeling helpless, I had to go downstairs to discuss with Xie and Lu. After listening to me, the two of them looked at each other in bewilderment. I've never heard of this kind of talisman brush. I'm afraid we can't find a place to buy it. What should I do? I had agreed on half a month's time with the hunchbacked old woman, and it was already past the halfway mark. If I couldn't make the talisman by then, it would be a small matter if I lost face, but if I made the old woman unhappy and something happened, it would be bad. Moreover, I had agreed to make talismans with the intention of befriending her. Ever since the appearance of the Luoho star, I had practically become a lone star, surrounded by enemies. That old woman's strength was tyrannical, and forming a good relationship with her would be greatly beneficial in the future. Not only that, but after confirming that witchcraft qi could be used to make talismans, it would also be extremely beneficial to the increase of my strength. I thought for a while and decided to find the hunchbacked old woman. I wanted to tell her the situation and see what she had to say. When Lu Chuanda heard that I was going to find the old woman, he suddenly slapped his thigh and screamed, "I got it!" Then he said to me, "Boss, that old woman is a fox spirit. Since she's cultivated to her level, she must be quite old. She should have a lot of foxes and grandchildren. Isn't it perfect to ask her to take care of the fox armpit brush? I also understood. Right, we had been busy for a long time, and now the idea was right in front of us. I went out and went to a hotel not far from the shop. The hunchbacked old woman was staying there. I asked around and found the old woman's room number. Before I knocked on the door, the old woman seemed to have seen me. She opened the door, but didn't invite me in. Her cloudy eyes gazed at me and asked, "Have you finished making the deceiving talisman?" I shook my head and used my Tao energy to isolate the surroundings. Then I told her why I had come. The old woman was surprised. She frowned. "The fox armpit is the most spiritual hair of the fox clan. If you take it, I'm afraid it will delay your cultivation for several years. All right, I can give you the fox armpit. However, you have to tell me the truth. How confident are you in making the deceiving talisman?" I thought for a while, then gave her a reasonable answer. 70%. When Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda went to the fur factory, I had tested the geraniums and the dead jade. Although their compatibility wasn't as high as the cinnabar and the Tao energy, they were compatible. If I could find a way to increase the compatibility, the deceiving talisman wouldn't be a problem. Chapter 277. With the hunchback woman's assurance, I exhaled in relief. I didn't mind her arrogant attitude and returned to my shop. I continued to study the sky sunflower blood and the death jade. After one day of study, I found that although the sky sunflower blood and the death jade were compatible with witchcraft energy, they both had their flaws. The sky sunflower blood had filthy yin energy, while the death jade had evil yin energy. They weren't pure yin energy. Although witchcraft energy was yin energy, it was neutral and peaceful like Tao energy. It wasn't sharp and murderous like yin energy. I didn't sleep that night. I accompanied Xiao Jin and watched TV while thinking about a solution. Coincidentally, in the middle of the night, I saw on the TV news that Master Cheng Yi of Guangxiao Temple in Taizhou had passed away and was buried in a vat. It reminded me of Fong Min, the funeral attendant I had met on the train. At that time, she had told me a strange story about the funeral she had hosted. She had mentioned the vat burial technique. Of course, I didn't remember her because of the vat burial technique. It was because of another part of the funeral. During the funeral, the deceased had to take a bath and change clothes. In Fong Min's story, the deceased Grandpa Yuan used the wrong water when he took a bath, which led to all the troubles that followed. I remembered the yin water that the deceased had to use when they took a bath during the funeral. The yin water was bought from the netherworld with yin money, such as burning incense or paper. This kind of water didn't have abundant yin energy, but it was neutral. Rumor had it that the yin energy sold by the netherworld was mixed with the water, which was very magical. I got up excitedly. Although the feng shui shop didn't have any paper money, we had plenty of incense and candles. I found some incense and candles and set up a memorial tablet for the 10 Yama kings in the room. I took a bowl of water and lit the incense and candles. After a long time of worship, I got a bowl of yin water. Then I took some of the death jade powder I had made during the day and the sky sunflower blood, which had less filthy energy. I mixed them with the yin water and tried to use my witchcraft energy to attach them. Just as I had expected, the sky sunflower blood and the death jade powder had a higher compatibility with my witchcraft energy. They were almost as compatible as cinnabar and Tao energy. However, I wasn't satisfied. I mixed them together and kept changing the ratio. Eventually, I found a suitable ratio that was even better than cinnabar. As long as the old woman brought me the fox's armpit, I had a 90% chance of making the heavenly deceiving talisman. Once the Heaven Deception Talisman is successfully made, I'll try the other scarlet and purple talismans recorded in the Death Scripture. At that time, it won't be difficult to make talismans that are stronger than the Golden Light Talisman and the Pure Yang Talisman. At this moment, the sky was already bright. After a busy night, I was also somewhat tired, so I went to sleep, not long after I got out of bed. The hunchbacked old woman appeared at the entrance of my shop. She coughed, "Xie Chenghua," and I hurried to greet her. She handed me a small pouch. I opened it and saw a bunch of fox fur of different lengths. I smelled a strange fragrance. Without waiting for me to ask, the old woman lowered her voice and said, "I'll leave the fox's armpit to you. I'll come and get the talisman in 1 week." After saying that, she seemed to have something else to do and left in a hurry without even entering the door. I felt strange and lifted my head to look at her. Although the old woman was usually hunchbacked, it seemed she was hunchbacked even more today. Moreover, when she spoke, her voice was low and hoarse, and she was gasping for breath. It seemed she was hurt. Did she get hurt while she was taking the fox's armpit? I didn't understand. This old woman's power was at the peak of the glorious knowledge realm. Moreover, Xie Changhua had told me that she only needed to find her own children to take the fox's armpit. Why was she hurt? After thinking for a long time, I couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to waste any more time. I gave the fox's armpit to Xie Changhua and asked him to make a fox's underarm brush. I also told him to use locust wood to make the shaft of the brush. It was to match the yin energy of the fox's armpit. Since we had decided to make the brush yesterday, Xie Changhua had contacted the craftsman during the day. After receiving the fox's armpit, he left in a hurry. It wasn't difficult to make a brush, but it took him 1 whole night. The next morning, Xie Changhua came back and gave me a brand new fox's underarm brush. Moreover, he was meticulous and brought back the extra fox's armpit that he had cut. Because I had smelled a strange fragrance from the fox's armpit yesterday, I felt that it wasn't simple. I put away the trimmed fur to study later. After returning to my room, I cleaned my hands and worshipped the mysterious fairy. Then I laid out the red talisman paper and picked up the fox's underarm brush. I dipped it into the mixed liquid I had made earlier and calmed my mind. I gathered my shaman energy and started to make the talisman. After comprehending the Tao energy and becoming an earth master, I had tried to make talismans. After that, I had made countless talismans and had accumulated a lot of experience. However, it was my first time making a red talisman. Moreover, I had to use my shaman energy to make a talisman. I didn't dare to be careless. I held my breath and focused my mind. My shaman energy followed the tip of the brush as I drew the heavenly deception talisman according to my memory. Half a minute later, sweat started to form on the tip of my nose. That ink bead was something that Xiao Jin had spent many years to condense. He had already given it to me. Now that he had recovered a little with great difficulty, I wanted to leave again. This didn't seem right. However, Xiao Jin didn't seem to care. He didn't wait for me to reply. He opened his mouth and spat out a ball of dark green gas that floated in front of me. After everything was done, Xiao Jin smiled and said, "With the true dragon vein, it won't take long for me to recover my power. Master, feel free to use it." I had already told him not to call me master, but he didn't want to change it no matter what. He insisted on calling me that. I smiled and rubbed his head. After thanking him, I closed my eyes and continued to recover my shaman energy. After my shaman energy had recovered, I started to make the talisman for the 3rd time. This time, After I had made more than half of the scarlet talisman, I felt that the shaman energy in my body had dried up. While maintaining control of the brush tip, I took the dark green gas that Xiao Jin had spat out and condensed it on the tip of the brush. The shaman energy in my body and Xiao Jin's were of the same origin. Naturally, there wouldn't be any rejection. I had used an iron plate to make the talisman. The steel had a melting point of around 1,000 degrees Celsius, burning energy to make the talisman. Not only was it, but it was also better than Tao Energy Talisman, but it was also better than Tao Talisman Cultivation. Could it be because he had completely restrained the temperature inside his body? After thinking for a long time, I still couldn't figure out the reason behind it. However, since the test was successful, these minor details weren't important anymore. I spirit talisman. Only I had around, but I to the time. Li talisman of the set. Room A. I went downstairs and asked Xie Chenghua to find the hunchback woman. The original plan was 15 days, but only 12 days had passed. I shouldn't be in such a hurry. However, I checked the time. It was the 28th of October in the lunar calendar. This year, the 10th month was a small month, and the 29th was the end of the month. In other words, Xiao Jin would recover his power tomorrow night. With his new body, he couldn't stay in the city. I had to take him out of the city. It would take at least 2 or 3 days to make a round trip. To prevent the matter with the hunchback woman being delayed, I had to deliver the talisman in advance. While Xie Chenghua went to find the hunchback woman, I asked Lu Chuanda to call Wang Kuan and ask him to come here. Wang Kuan had been helping out in the shop. However, his wife had just given birth, so he went back to take care of her. I had seen him the day I came back. He hadn't shown up since. Shortly after, the hunchback woman followed Xie Chenghua to the shop. As soon as she saw me, she hurried to me. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Kid, did you make the talisman?" I pointed at the wooden box on the table. "Since I asked you to come, it's true." The old woman was ecstatic. She reached out her hand to pick up the wooden box to check. I hurriedly stopped her and said, "Hold on. The talismans are finished, but we haven't discussed the payment yet. Auntie, do you think we should discuss the payment first?" After hearing what I said, the old woman's ecstatic expression disappeared. She sat down on a chair. Her voice returned to its previous indifference. "You are the seller. Just tell me what payment you want. As long as it's suitable, this old woman will satisfy you." I smiled. "The payment I want is simple. The fox armpit brush is mine. The cost of making the talisman is several million. You will pay for it. Finally, I want to ask Auntie a question." The hunchback woman frowned. After a moment of silence, she stared at me and said, "The fox armpit brush is yours. The money is easy. Just give me a number. As for the question you want to ask, this old woman can't guarantee it. I only have a doubt in my heart. It doesn't matter if Auntie is willing to answer it or not." After I said that, I pushed the wooden box in front of the old woman. The feeling I had felt just now was similar to the feeling I had when Lu Xiening had taken control of my body. Although the hunchbacked old woman hadn't reached the Heaven Master realm yet, I guessed that she already had a part of the Heaven Master's power. Luckily, I had always wanted to form a good relationship with her. Otherwise, if I had angered her, the result would have been terrible. Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda were in a worse state than me. After around 10 minutes, they finally recovered. However, they were still scared, and their faces were pale. They walked over and asked me worriedly, "Will the old woman come to trouble us again?" Chapter 279. On the way out of the city, I kept thinking about what the hunchbacked old woman had said. I had heard of the Qingqiu tribe before. There was a saying in the scripture of Guizong. Qiyu was born from the amniotic water, and the emperor killed him in Qingqiu. From this, it could be seen that Qingqiu was the name of the place. In the classic of Nanshan, there was a beast on the mountain of Qingqiu. It looked like a fox with 9 tails, and its voice was like a baby's. To put it simply, the Qingqiu tribe that the old woman had mentioned was the fox tribe. However, I had always thought that Qingqiu was just another name for the fox. But the meaning behind the old woman's words was a little strange. She said that the Qingqiu tribe was different from ordinary monsters. Could it be that the Qingqiu tribe didn't refer to the fox tribe, but a special tribe of the fox tribe? Could it be the 9-tailed fox recorded in the classic of Nanshan? With that thought, I was a little scared. The fox tribe was a different kind of monster. Since ancient times, there were many strange records about them. They were the monsters that were born with intelligence. The 9-tailed fox was even more incredible. According to legend, in ancient times, the 9-tailed fox was a member of the Tushan tribe. Yu the Great took her as his wife. It wasn't a monster anymore, but a legend. Of course, ancient legends were often erroneous and shouldn't be believed. However, the old woman's words seemed to have some hidden meaning. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a strong, murderous aura. If I had a chance in the future, I would have to learn more about the metaphysics world to avoid making the same mistake as today. After thinking for a while, I put this matter to the back of my mind and asked Wang Kuan, "How's the situation at home? Didn't you say that your wife is about to give birth?" When Wang Kuan heard me mention this, his mouth instantly cracked open. He smiled and said, "Not yet. There's still a week before the due date." When I called him over, I thought that his wife must have given birth after so many years. I didn't expect that she hadn't given birth yet. I felt a little apologetic and hurriedly apologized. I didn't think it through. Giving birth is a big deal. I can't leave my wife alone at home. How about I contact CEO Wang and send a driver over? However, Wang Kuan hurriedly waved his hand. There's no need. My family has already come to take care of me. As a man, I can't help much at home. Besides, it's not like I'm going far away. It's just a few days. It won't delay anything. Seeing his insistence, I pondered for a moment. Nothing would happen on this trip, so I nodded and changed the topic. Did you get a checkup? Is the boy still a girl? Nowadays, with the development of technology, although the country prohibited the disclosure of gender, the checks were not strict. Most people had already secretly checked their gender before. Indeed, Wang Kuan grinned again. He's a punk. Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you, Brother Zhou. I was surprised. Why is he thanking me for giving birth to a son? Why did it sound a little off? Before I could ask, Wang Kuan immediately explained, "I've been married for 3 or 4 years. You should know that our family doesn't have a lot of people. Fourth uncle's business is so big, but he still doesn't have any children. Hence, my family has been urging me to have a child. However, in the first 2 years of marriage, my wife's stomach didn't have any reaction. Until the end of last year, when we were in Shenangjia, didn't you give me a talisman? After I returned, I hung it at home. Originally, I just wanted to ward off evil spirits and ask for peace. Who knew that not long after I hung it up, my wife got pregnant? At first, I didn't think about it. Later on, I had nothing to do, so I calculated the date of my wife's pregnancy. Only then did I realize that it was around the time I hung the talisman at home. Hence, it's all thanks to you, Brother Zhou. I can't thank you enough. If you need my help in the future, just say the word. I won't say anything else." Only then did I understand what he meant. However, I was still stunned. This matter, could it be a coincidence? I vaguely remembered that I had given him a scorching yang talisman. This talisman contained vigorous yang energy, and it was very effective in warding off evil spirits. However, I had never heard that a scorching yang talisman could give birth to a child. But then again, pregnancy was a combination of yin and yang. Wang Kuen's wife hadn't gotten pregnant for several years because of the imbalance of yin and yang energy. There were many reasons for the imbalance of yin and yang. However, if what Wang Kuen said was true, the geomancy of his house wasn't good, which resulted in a lot of yin energy and a lack of yang energy. His wife's inability to get pregnant was probably related to the geomancy. Moreover, the scorching yang talisman had a lot of yang energy. After hanging it in his house, it replenished the yang energy and changed the geomancy of his house. From then on, yin and yang energy were balanced, so it was natural that his wife got pregnant. In that case, he really had to thank me. I smiled and didn't think much of it. Then I said, "Brother Wang, since we've met, you've taken good care of me. How about this? Since this child is fated with me, I'll personally make a locket. When the child is born, I'll give it to you." A locket? Wang Kuen didn't seem to understand what I meant. I smiled and explained, "It's a longevity locket." Ah, at that moment, Wang Kuen understood. His expression immediately turned agitated as he rubbed his hands on the steering wheel. His voice was somewhat incoherent as he hurriedly said, "How can we accept this? It's too valuable." It's too valuable. Although he said it was precious, he didn't have any intention of rejecting it. In the end, all his excitement turned into gratitude. He promised me that if I had any problems in the future, I could ask him for help. I didn't laugh at his hypocrisy. As a new father, I naturally wanted to give the best things to my child, let alone a longevity locket. A longevity locket was also known as a locket in the metaphysical world. It was different from the silver locket that ordinary children wore. In the metaphysical world, the locket was made by a person with a profound cultivation base. He would write the name and date of birth on a piece of paper. After that, he would cast a secret technique and use a 5-colored rope to make it. The life soul of a newborn was unstable. After they were born, they had to wear a longevity locket to ward off evil spirits and live a long life. However, the longevity locket of an ordinary family didn't have much use. It could only serve as a comfort. However, the locket was different. After wearing it, it could absorb a wisp of the newborn's life soul and lock the life soul. Even if the newborn encountered a disaster, it could save their life. It was extremely precious. Wang Kuen and I had known each other for a long time. He naturally knew that the longevity locket I was talking about wasn't an ordinary item. He was very excited and had no reason to reject it. As we chatted along the way, the sky quickly darkened. Since little gold would transform tomorrow, I wasn't in a hurry. I stayed with Wang Kuen in a small town on the outskirts of the city for a night. We continued our journey the next day. Not long after, we arrived at Longmen County, which was at the junction of Hui Province and Heyuan. Shenzhen was surrounded by economically developed areas. After walking all the way here, we finally arrived at the remote mountains. After getting off the car in a remote village in Longmen County, I told Wang Kuen to return to the county to stay for the night and pick me up the next day. As we had known each other for a long time, Wang Kuen was used to my behavior. He didn't ask anything and directly drove away. Little gold, and I circled around the remote village and went to the remote mountains behind the village. We found a spacious valley and stopped to rest. We sat there and waited for half the afternoon. We didn't see any trace of anyone. Only then did I feel at ease. I didn't move forward anymore and decided to stay here. Although I had seen little gold's real body, I was still excited. Little Gold was even more excited than me. It was the first time he had recovered his body and power outside of the Yellow Spring River after so many years. As the night approached, I looked at the time. I had planned to leave Little Gold's side at around midnight to prevent him from getting hurt. However, at around 11:30 p.m., Little Gold suddenly told me that he could feel the power in his body starting to grow. As it spun, the shaman energy seemed to be growing. What was going on? I quickly pulled myself out of my thoughts and carefully felt it. It was because Xiao Jin's body was emitting strong shaman energy waves. The Tao energy in my body was growing from Xiao Jin's body. This discovery made me excited. However, when I estimated the speed of the shaman energy growth in my body, I smiled wryly. This speed was too slow. It was almost the same speed as when I used to cultivate Tao energy. According to this speed, I would need at least 10 years to reach glory of knowledge completion. Moreover, this was under the premise that I could cultivate at any time. In reality, Xiao Jin could only recover his body for 2 hours every month. With this calculation, he might not reach glory of knowledge completion even after 100 years. It's better than nothing. I smiled wryly and shook my head. I continued to immerse myself in absorbing the shaman energy. More than an hour passed in the blink of an eye. At midnight, Little Gold opened his eyes on time with a smile on his face. He told me that in the past hour, he had relied on the true dragon vein to recover a considerable amount of power. He could already condense an ink bead with great difficulty. As he said that, he spat out an ink bead that was half the size of the previous one. Xiao Jin smiled and told me to take it to increase the shaman energy in my body. If I hadn't known about Xiao Jin's situation before, I would have definitely taken it. However, I couldn't take it now. Xiao Jin had spent a lot of time to condense the previous ink bead, and I had used it. Now that he had recovered a little, it would be too greedy of me to take it. Moreover, the seal in Xiao Jin's body needed time to recover before it could be removed. If I took away the shaman energy that he had recovered so greedily, I didn't know how long it would take for him to remove the seal. I tried my best to persuade Xiao Jin to take the ink bead back. However, he told me that if I needed it in the future, I could take it. I sighed. I didn't know why Xiao Jin was so nice to me. It wasn't that I hadn't asked him, but Xiao Jin seemed to be confused. I wanted to investigate, but I didn't know where to start. After he swallowed the ink bead, Xiao Jin's transformation time was up. His body rapidly returned to its previous 1-meter tall form. When I returned to him from the hillside, Xiao Jin was naked. Pieces of cloth hung on his body. He couldn't wear his clothes for a long time. Fortunately, I had considered this before I came and had brought other clothes. After helping him put on his clothes, the two of us didn't hurry to go back. Instead, we lay side by side on the hillside, looking at the stars in the sky as we chatted about our own matters. Xiao Jin didn't talk much. When he talked about the past, he talked about the small things that happened when he was trapped in the Yellow Springs River. Chapter 281. After I entered the room, I lifted my head and saw Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda lying on the ground. Dried blood trickled down the corners of their mouths, and they looked extremely frightened. When they saw me, their eyes looked hopeful and aggrieved. They said in unison, "Boss, you're finally back." I didn't pay attention to them for the time being. I lifted my head and looked at the center of the lobby. An old woman with a gloomy face was sitting on a wooden chair. She was glaring at me. It was the hunchbacked old woman. My heart tightened. Did something go wrong with the heavenly deception talisman? Even if something went wrong, the hunchbacked old woman could have waited for me to come back and discuss. However, She had directly attacked me and hurt Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda. She was too overbearing. My face darkened. I raised my voice and asked, "Auntie, what do you mean by this?" "Humph," the hunchbacked old woman sneered. "That day, I praised you for your courage. Who would have thought that I would underestimate you? You're not just courageous. You're extremely daring." Then she raised her hand and threw a wooden box in front of me. I focused my eyes and saw that it was the wooden box containing the heavenly deception talisman that I had given her the other day. It seemed there was something wrong with the talisman. I took a deep breath and asked, "Auntie, have you used the heavenly deception talisman? Are you not satisfied with the talisman's effect?" The hunchbacked old woman's face darkened. She sneered and said, "Not satisfied? If I was really not satisfied with the talisman's effect, I wouldn't have come to your door. Lower your head and take a good look. Your talisman is useless. The talisman power inside can't be triggered. That day, you were so sure that I was fooled. I didn't even check it. Who would have thought that you would dare to deceive me? Are you tired of living? It's useless? How is this possible?" Although I came up with the idea of using magic chi to make talismans, I experimented with the scorching sun talisman after the talisman was made. The effect was excellent. Even if the two talismans were different and had different characteristics, the heaven-deceiving talisman shouldn't be unable to draw out the talisman's power. What's going on? I frowned and opened the lid of the broken wooden box. I picked up the talisman inside and looked at it for a long time. At first, I was confused, but after looking at it for a while, I suddenly remembered something. I suddenly slapped my head and bitterly smiled. So that's how it is. It's not that the heaven deception talisman is useless. It's just that I made a mistake. The celestial deception talisman is a set of talismans. Only when all 36 of them are put together can the talisman power be activated. However, in the set of talismans I gave to the hunchbacked old woman, the core red talisman is made of wizard chi, while the other 35 yellow talismans are made of Taoist chi. The basic power that makes up the talisman power is different. The celestial deception talisman is just like what the hunchbacked old woman had said. It's useless. I wryly smiled. It was a small mistake that could be easily discovered. However, I had been thinking about the talisman made with magic chi for the past few days. When I finally solved the problem, I thought about the power of the talismans made with magic chi. After I tested the talisman with the scorching sun talisman, I subconsciously felt that my work was complete. I directly put all the talismans together and didn't care about them anymore. After giving the talisman to the hunchbacked old woman, I was worried about Xiaojin and hurried to leave the shop. I didn't even remember that I had made a small mistake. After thinking it through, I hurried to talk to the hunchbacked old woman. "Auntie, I'm really sorry. I was in a hurry when I made the talismans. I made a small mistake. Please wait for 2 or 3 days. I'll make some adjustments to the talismans. I'm sure you'll be satisfied with the results. What do you think?" As soon as I finished talking, the old woman looked at me with disdain. "You cunning boy, do you really think I'm a fool? Last time, you lied to me because you thought that the spirit race wouldn't dare to make a move in the city, right? But I've already made a move. Do you still want to deceive me?" I was dumbfounded. The fox race was naturally suspicious. It was obvious that this old woman didn't trust me. What should I do? I hurriedly said, "How about this? You stay in the shop for a few days. You can even guard me and watch me make the talismans. After the talismans are made, you can personally test the effects of the talismans. If you're not satisfied, you can punish me later. What do you think?" Although I was resentful, I was a fish on the chopping block. I had no choice but to lower my head. My suggestion seemed to move the hunchbacked old woman. She lowered her head and pondered. When she lifted her head, she suddenly stretched her hand and grabbed my shoulder from a distance. She coldly said, "It's not a bad idea to supervise you in person. However, you're really cunning. I won't feel at ease if you stay here. You should come with me. If it's really as you said, I'll let you go. But if you're just bluffing me, you can forget about ever seeing the light of day again in this life." After she said that, she didn't wait for me to respond. She grabbed my shoulder and dragged me out of the door. I wanted to shout a few times. Although we were surrounded by ordinary people, the old woman wouldn't dare to kill on the street in broad daylight, no matter how powerful she was. As long as there were a few brave people, they might be able to hold the old woman back. It was a pity that I couldn't even move my mouth after being restrained by her. I couldn't even make a sound. After I went out, Xiao Jin and Wang Kuan still listened to my instructions and stood at the door. When they saw me being dragged out by the old woman, their expressions changed. Xiao Jin didn't have any power at the moment, while Wang Kuan was an ordinary person. I thought that the hunchbacked old woman would bring me past them, but I never expected that the old woman would suddenly stop. At this moment, Wang Kuan and the others reacted. Xiao Jin stood still, but Wang Kuan reached out to pick up a wooden flower rack at the door and threw it at the hunchbacked old woman. I was frightened. The hunchbacked old woman's power was close to that of a heavenly master, while Wang Kuan was just an ordinary person. If we angered this temperamental old fox, she could easily kill Wang Kuan with a flick of her finger. He was about to become a father. If he died here, how could I face his family? I struggled to stop him, but I couldn't move my body. I could only watch as Wang Kuan viciously threw the flower rack at the hunchbacked old woman's shoulder. Bang! The flower rack was smashed to pieces, but the hunchbacked old woman didn't move at all. Wang Kuan was dumbfounded. He held the broken piece of wood that was a few inches long and was stunned. I thought that the hunchbacked old woman was about to take revenge. However, I waited for a long time, but she didn't do anything. I tried my best to turn my head and look at her face. Only then did I realize that her expression was even worse than Wang Kuan's. She stood there and stared at Xiao Jin. Her pupils had strangely shrunk into a vertical line. It was obvious that she was extremely shocked. Did she notice Xiao Jin's abnormality? As soon as I had that thought, she loosened her grip and threw me to the ground. I hurried to get up from the ground and looked at the hunchbacked old woman. She wasn't frightened anymore. She was frightened. Her body was shivering, and she wanted to run away from Xiao Jin. However, she didn't dare to move. She could only stand there, shivering. After I calmed down, I thought for a while and turned to Xiao Jin. I whispered to him and Wang Kuan to return to the shop first. After the two of them left, the hunchbacked old woman finally stopped shivering. Her pupils, which had shrunk into a vertical line, slowly opened. However, she still looked at me in shock. I faintly smiled at her and said, "Auntie, this matter was indeed my fault for not considering it thoroughly. However, you injured someone just because of a disagreement. Aren't you being a bit too overbearing? I'll stand by what I said just now. Go back and wait for 2 to 3 days. I promise that I'll definitely finish making this talisman. You can come back to collect it then." This time, I couldn't see the hunchbacked woman's domineering attitude. As soon as I finished talking, she nodded and hurried to leave. Chapter 282. I hurried back to the shop. Xia Chenghua and Lu Chuanda were still lying on the ground. Wang Kuan was checking their injuries. I hurried to them and asked Xiao Jin to go back upstairs to rest. Then I thanked Wang Kuan and said, "Brother Wang, you've been out for a few days and your wife's due date is almost here. You should go home first." I can handle this. Wang Kuan was a man who had experienced many hardships in society. He understood that I wanted to send him away. He didn't say anything more. After telling me to be careful, he hurried to drive away. After he left, I lowered my head to check Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda's injuries. Metaphysics included medicine. I had also dabbled in it, but my cultivation wasn't deep enough. I could only treat common headaches and fevers. Fortunately, after a quick check, I found that the hunchbacked old woman hadn't attacked them severely. The two of them only had some minor internal injuries. Moreover, they were a little tired, but it wasn't a big deal. Then, I realized that I was worried. No matter what, Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda were now my people. If they were seriously injured this time, I would have to uphold justice for them no matter what. However, I was obviously not a match for the hunchbacked old woman, and it was inevitable that there would be a rift between us. I wanted to transfer some Tao energy to them to alleviate their injuries, but I suddenly remembered that my Tao energy was still at the ceiling acupoint realm, which was inferior to theirs. So, I gave up on this thought and helped them sit down. I asked the hunchbacked old woman when she had come to our door, and if she had dealt a heavy blow to them. Xie Chenghua told me. After I left that day, I went to the place where the hunchbacked old woman stayed to collect the bill. Everything was fine when I collected the bill, and he came back with the money. However, not long after he returned to the shop, the old woman stormed into the shop. She didn't give them a chance to explain and beat them up. Then, she searched the house and said that she wanted to find me. At first, Xie Chenghua thought that the old woman had changed her mind after paying the bill and wanted to come back to rob me. Now, he understood that the talisman had a problem. However, they didn't know where to find me. When the old woman was about to go crazy, Xie Chenghua was smart enough to talk to her. Although the talisman has a problem, I didn't mean to deceive you. When I made the talisman, I found a lot of special materials. For example, the fox armpit pen. The hunchbacked old woman also knows that. If I really wanted to deceive you, how could there be so many problems? I also said that I would come back in 3 to 5 days. Then I can check the talisman. I tried my best to persuade the hunchbacked old woman. However, the two of them still suffered a lot. From that day on, the hunchbacked old woman sat there and waited for me for 3 days. The two of them were also injured. They lay on the ground and waited for me for 3 days. Fortunately, I came back on time. Otherwise, if that old woman lost her patience, it would be hard to say what the final result would be. After listening to him, I felt less resentful toward the old woman. She had spent a lot of time and energy to get this talisman. She had waited for half a year, and when she got the talisman, she found that it couldn't be used. It was normal for her to do something impulsive when she felt that way. However, she didn't kill anyone. Instead, she waited for 3 more days. Although it was mainly because of the temptation of the Heaven Deception Talisman, it at least proved that the old lady had no evil intentions. Just as I was about to support the two of them upstairs to rest, Xie Chenghua asked me curiously, "Boss, that old fox already took you out. Why did he let you come back after reaching the door?" It wasn't easy to answer this question to him. I grinned and said, "That old woman's strength isn't bad, but I'm not a noob either." Inside the store, I was accidentally controlled by her. Outside the store, I counterattacked and broke free from her control. That old woman probably couldn't easily control me, so she agreed to my suggestion. I was only half joking, but the moment I said that, Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda both gasped in shock. In the end, it was Xie Chenghua who said with envy and admiration, "Boss is truly a young talent. You've just arrived at Shuyao, yet you're able to make this old fox who's close to the celestial master realm, wary. It's really, really admirable. This time, it was my turn to be dumbfounded. What a joke! In the glory of consciousness realm, the difference in strength between every level was like heaven and earth. Not to mention the heavenly master realm, I wasn't even a match for Yi Pianpian and Zhang Canwen, who were in the middle stage of glory of consciousness. Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda really believed everything. However, thinking about it, the two of them knew me at the metaphysics exchange competition. At that time, I used my pressure point realm cultivation to consecutively defeat a few Nanyang people in the glory of consciousness realm. That was probably the reason why the two of them felt that it wasn't a big deal for me to challenge those in a higher realm. I smiled awkwardly, not knowing how to explain. At that moment, Xie Chenghua took the initiative to change the topic. He asked me if I needed them to prepare anything else since I was going to make a new talisman. In order to repair the Heavenly Deception Talisman, the main thing was to change the 35 normal yellow talismans to the same talismans made with shaman energy. Naturally, they needed the materials from last time. However, the two of them were injured and hadn't rested for 3 days. I told them that we would discuss the matter of the talismans later and told them to rest first. Both of them didn't have any serious injuries. After a night's rest, they were much better the next day. According to my instructions, they went to look for the first sunflower's blood and the death jade. After that, I spent 2 days to make all 35 talismans in one vigorous spurt. This time, when I put the whole set of talismans together, the 36 talismans seemed to automatically respond to each other. Each talisman released its own aura, and after mixing with each other, the color of the talismans changed, turning purple. I was dumbstruck as I watched from the side. No wonder this set of talismans was called purple. It turned out that it would automatically turn purple. Previously, I and the hunchbacked old woman, one was ignorant, and the other didn't understand the Tao of talismans. We actually ignored such an obvious sign. After the talismans were completed, I asked Xie Chenghua to find the old woman. However, he didn't find her this time. 2 days later, she proactively appeared in my shop. This time, she didn't have the cold and arrogant aura she had before. After entering the shop, she looked around carefully before asking for the talismans. When I gave her the wooden box containing the Heavenly Deception talismans, she opened it and glanced at it. Then, she left as fast as she could. Xie and Lu, who were watching from the side, were stunned. Even I was dumbfounded. Although I knew that she was afraid of Xiao Jin, she was still at the quasi-sky master realm. Who knew that she would be afraid of him to such an extent? If the Heavenly Deception talismans weren't so important to her, she wouldn't even want to show her face. No matter what, this matter was finally over. I heaved a sigh of relief. In the next few days, I didn't do anything else. I stayed in the shop and rested, wondering if I should go to Thailand or secretly go to the capital. There was no need to mention the reason why I wanted to go to Thailand. However, I wanted to go to the capital because I was worried about Yi Pianpian and the fatty. Last time, I had asked Yang Kaichen to ask for information, but many days had passed, and he hadn't received any news. I understood that Shenzhen was too far from the capital. It wasn't that Yang Kaichen didn't try his best to find information. It was just that he couldn't get any information. However, according to the information Yang Kaichen had told me, the people of the Metaphysics Society didn't want to keep their mouths shut about Yi Pianpian. As long as I went to the capital, I wouldn't be able to see her. However, it wouldn't be a big deal if I just wanted to ask for information about her. Coincidentally, I would pass by Kaifeng on the way, so I decided to go to Mount Huang to ask about the fatty. Although I had a grudge because he didn't tell me about the solar eclipse, I still trusted the fatty. As long as I knew their situation, I didn't have anything to worry about anymore. Next, I would go to the royal palace in Thailand to see Aladi's teacher, Saranpo. If the power of the 9 spirits he mentioned was really witchcraft energy, I would stay there for a while to increase my cultivation base. I wouldn't come back for a while. If the power of the 9 spirits wasn't witchcraft energy, I would go there to relax. Of course, it was a foreign country, and I didn't know what kind of dangers were waiting for me there. However, the path of cultivation was full of dangers. There was no way to give up eating for fear of choking. While I was making up my mind, Yang Kaichen called me. He asked me to go to his house. I had been to his house once, so I knew the address. After hanging up the phone, I hurried to his house. When we arrived, he sent his wife away. He was the only one in the house. As soon as we sat down, Yang Kaichen cheerfully told me that he had contacted Zhang Kenwen a few days ago and asked him to gather information about Yi Piampian and Lin, who in the capital. Soon after, he got the news about Lin, Hu, and Yi Piampian. When I heard that, I was overjoyed. I had wanted to contact Zhang Kanwen, but after the incident in Meizhou, I couldn't get through to him. That was why I couldn't get in touch with him. Instinctively, I thought that he had gone to some secluded place to cultivate, so I didn't ask Yang Kaichen. I didn't expect that he could contact me. After asking, I learned that Yang Kaichen had gone to Meizhou 1 month ago to visit Master Zhao's grave to offer his condolences. Coincidentally, he had met Zhang Kanwen there. That was how I got in touch with him. I patted my head. Although we had killed Zhang Bingcheng during that incident, he had been in Meizhou for many years. It was hard to say if he didn't have some loyal dogs. If Master Zhao's grave was in Meizhou, Zhang Kanwen wouldn't feel at ease. Even if he had to live in seclusion, he would stay nearby to take care of him. After thinking it through, I asked Yang Kaichen about Yi Piampian and the fatty. Yang Kaichen told me that Zhang Kanwen didn't know much about Yi Piampian's situation. He just confirmed that the Metaphysics Society had imprisoned her in a cold place. I heard that people who went to that place couldn't come out again. It was also a coincidence that Zhang Kanwen met the fatty as soon as he arrived in the capital. He was on his way back to Kaifeng. Since Zhang Kanwen didn't know him, he didn't ask him. He just took a picture and sent it to me. Then, Yang Kaichen handed me his phone to show me the picture Zhang Kanwen had sent. I picked it up. It was the fatty. However, the other person next to him caught my attention. Nangong. He was also safe and sound. Moreover, he was next to the fatty. I frowned and thought for a while. During the solar eclipse, Nangong had brought Yi Piampian to the back mountain of the Metaphysics Society. His methods weren't bad. It wasn't a big deal that he could escape. After returning the phone to Yang Kaichen, I exhaled. No matter what, I had confirmed that Yi Piampian and the fatty were safe. I could relax for the time being. As for Yi Piampian being imprisoned by the Metaphysics Society, even if I wanted to, I couldn't do anything about it. I could only wait and think about it later. I left Zhang Kanwen's contact information, then bid farewell to Yang Kaichen. I returned to the Feng Shui metaphysics shop. As soon as I entered the shop, I saw Xie Chenghua sitting there with a dazed face. My heart sank. Did that old woman come to cause trouble again? Before I could ask, Xie Chenghua got up and hurried to me. The police have taken Lu Chuanda away. Wang Yongjun's power wasn't ordinary. After a few minutes, he called back. His voice was much heavier than before. He told me that Lu Chuanda's case wasn't simple. He had asked a high-ranking member of the Shenzhen police force to ask about it. He also asked him to use his connections to take care of Lu Chuanda. However, the other side told me that Lu Chuanda was involved in a big case and that no information was allowed to be leaked. Not to mention taking care of him, they couldn't even reveal the details of the case. After explaining the situation, Wang Yongjun asked me, "How deep is Lu Chuanda's involvement in this case? If it's not too deep, he can use his connections in the province to see if he can solve this case." At this moment, my face was completely dark. Although Wang Yongjun hadn't found a definite case, there weren't many cases in the country that could be classified as a major case by the police. Even the higher-ups of the police didn't dare to reveal the information. I was afraid that my worries would come true. I didn't know if Lu Chuanda was involved in this case or not, and I didn't dare to give Wang Yongjun an answer. After thinking for a while, I told him, "As long as you can ask someone to check the situation, it's fine. As for saving Lu Chuanda, it's not urgent." After hanging up, Xie Chenghua and I sat there, waiting for the news. This time, Wang Yongjun's efficiency wasn't good. I waited for a long time, but he didn't call me. I had to talk to Xie Chenghua, trying to find another way to investigate this case. After chatting for a while, I thought of an idea. According to Xie Chenghua, a woman came to my shop to ask for help. That was why Lu Chuanda was involved. The police didn't want to reveal the details of the case. However, since the woman wasn't in the police station, I could ask her about the situation. After thinking it through, I quickly made up my mind. I asked Xie Chenghua to stay in the shop and wait for Wang Yongjun's call. I went out to find Yufuda's wife to ask about the situation. When I left the shop, I sighed. From the day I learned about this case, I had been restless. Instinctively, I didn't want to have anything to do with this case. However, I had never thought that I would be involved in this case. That day, when the woman came to my shop to ask for help, she had left her address. Moreover, it wasn't hard to find an orchard in the outskirts of the city. I took a taxi and soon arrived at the Fuda fruit tree orchard in the outskirts of the city. The taxi took me directly to the entrance of the orchard. After getting out of the car, I lifted my head and saw a sign that said Fuda Fruit Tree Plantation Limited Company. I could see that Yufuda's business wasn't small. He had a plantation, and he had even set up a company. Unfortunately, the gate of the orchard was sealed by the Shenzhen Public Security Bureau. The entire orchard was sealed. Yufuda's house was in the orchard. Chapter 284. We can't save him? I frowned and thought for a long time, but I didn't understand what Peng Huaiyun meant. I asked her, "As far as I know, Lu Chuanda only went to the police station once because of your invitation. Besides that, he has nothing to do with this case. I can understand why he was brought to the police station for investigation. But what do you mean by you can't save him?" Peng Huaiyun was still sitting there. She picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. Then she smiled and shook her head. "It's not that I can't save him. Just now, in the police station, a policeman told me that Lu Chuanda can't get out." Why would the policeman say that? The reason the police are saying this is because something strange happened. Peng Huaiyun didn't wait for me to ask this time. The faint smile on his face disappeared, and a strange expression appeared on his face as he continued to speak. "This case has too many implications. For the past few days, the city and the province have been busy. It wasn't until last week that the Ministry of Public Security finally set up a special task force to head down south. The people from Beijing have arrived. Naturally, they have to reinvestigate this case, including the witnesses and evidence. There aren't any witnesses in this case, but there's a lot of evidence. Evidence? I was a little surprised. Then I remembered that Lu Chuanda had told me about the dozens of severed limbs of the deceased. The evidence Peng Huaiyun was talking about should be these. Before I could think further, Peng Huaiyun continued to tell me that there were many people in the special task force from the capital. There were even a few forensic doctors. When they arrived, they immediately went to the morgue to take out the sealed evidence. They felt that something was wrong. So they called the forensic doctors who were in charge of this case to ask about the situation. When the forensic doctors from the Shenzhen police station came to take a look, they all opened their eyes wide in shock. Forensic doctors dealt with corpses all day long, so of course they had guts. However, they had never seen such a scene before. The pieces of flesh that Yufuda had killed and chopped up had somehow been pieced together in the cold storage of the police station, forming a complete corpse. One had to know that when they were storing, every piece of minced meat and every piece of corpse was packed in a bag with a serial number on it. But now, all the bags were broken and scattered to the side. The minced meat seemed to struggle out of the bag on its own and forcefully squeeze together, returning to the appearance of a corpse. This was because these pieces of flesh did not originally come from the same corpse. After they were forcibly pieced together, they looked like a doll that had been sewn together. One piece was black, one piece was white, one piece was fat, and one piece was thin. Furthermore, half of these corpses were children, so some of the large bodies had small heads on them. Some of the small bodies had fat human heads on them. It looked ridiculous and terrifying. The local forensic doctors who had performed the autopsy were all stunned, and some even fainted on the spot. Fortunately, the forensic doctor from the capital had never seen the previous situation. He was more suspicious of everything, but he was not very afraid. So he did the autopsy again. After examining for a while, the forensic doctors from the capital also felt that something was wrong. This was because the dozens of corpses that were pieced together looked exactly the same. No matter if they were black or white, fat or thin, tall or short, all the corpses, from their body proportions to their facial structure, were exactly the same. This time, the forensic doctors from the capital couldn't stand it anymore. If the corpses that had been pieced together before were sewn together, they could still explain it. But now, there were dozens of corpses that looked exactly the same. How could they explain it? Eventually, a forensic doctor gathered his courage and took photos of all the corpses. He made a model and drew the corpse's appearance on the computer. According to the police's speculation, there must be a reason for the corpses to look like this. Perhaps there were some clues hidden in it. After the photos were done, the task force studied them for a long time, but they still couldn't figure it out. In the end, the local police accidentally recognized the photo. The person in the photo was Lu Chuanda, who had gone to the police station to ask about the case. Thus, the police didn't hesitate to send their men to bring Lu Chuanda back. Peng Huayun was also summoned for questioning due to the new changes in the case. She was asked to explain everything that had happened since she had met Lu Chuanda. After listening to her, I was dumbfounded. I sat there in a daze for a long time. I couldn't figure out why the corpses had turned into Lu Chuanda's appearance. According to what he had told me that day, he had only accepted Peng Huayun's request for help and went to the police station to see Yufuda and the deputy bureau chief Zhang. Apart from that, he had no contact with the case at all. No matter how I thought about it, this shouldn't have happened. What was the problem? Could it be that Lu Chuanda didn't tell me the truth? My thoughts were a mess, and I couldn't come up with an answer even after a long time. I temporarily put all my thoughts aside and asked Peng Huayun. Even so, the police only called Lu Chuanda to assist in the investigation. Why did they say that he couldn't come out? Right now, there's no evidence to prove that Lu Chuanda was directly involved in this case, right? Peng Huayun leaned back on the sofa and shook her head. It depends on the police's attitude towards this case. Lu Chuanda should have told you before that the police's original attitude was to turn a big problem into a small one and close the case as soon as possible to avoid causing panic. I nodded. Lu Chuanda had told me that the police wanted to close the case as soon as possible. Thus, Yu Fuda had to die, regardless of whether he had intended to kill or not. Peng Huayun continued. However, besides closing the case, the police also suspected that this case was related to some evil cult or other terrorist activities. So, after the people from Beijing came, the police's current attitude was that the investigation would continue. However, as long as they confirmed that everyone involved in this case had to die. Her voice was calm, but my heart shivered. Everyone had to die. This kind of behavior was too cruel. However, when faced with such a horrible case, it seemed that executing everyone involved was the safest way. Otherwise, who knew what would happen in the future? The investigation was one thing. The most important thing wasn't the truth, but the consequences. For the safety of the majority of people, it was reasonable for a small group of people to die. But Lu Chuanda is my man after all. How can I watch him die in such a muddle-headed way? After sitting there and thinking for a long time, I lifted my head to look at Peng Huayun. This woman's mental state was too strong. After saying so much calmly, she was still as calm as ever. It should be known that her husband, Yu Fuda, was included in the list of people she said would definitely die. I didn't know why, but I felt some disgust towards this woman, but I still had to ask her about the case in the future. I said to her patiently, I want to save Lu Chuanda, and you want to save your husband. Right now, our interests are the same. If there's any news from the police in the future, can you notify me immediately? Then I wrote down my current phone number and gave it to her. Peng Huayun picked up the note and glanced at it. Then she put it back on the table and said noncommittally, It's not a problem to inform you, but to save him. I don't have much hope. You shouldn't have too much hope either. I didn't answer her. After thanking her, I stood up and left. Xie Chenghua was still waiting in the shop. I had to go back and discuss this with him to see if I could come up with any good ideas. When I returned to the shop, Xie Chenghua was sitting on a chair in the lobby. He was holding a phone in his hand, which was hanging in the air. His face was blank. After I entered the shop, he came back to himself and put down the phone with a distressed face. Then he saw that my expression wasn't right, so he asked doubtfully, Boss, you already know? I nodded and sat down on a chair next to him. I sighed. Brother Lu, this is a big problem. Let's talk about it. Xie Chenghua was still in shock after learning about this strange situation. He nodded at me, but he couldn't say anything. His eyes were still blank. I didn't ask him again, but started to think. To be honest, Lu Chuanda wasn't a good person, and that included Xie Chenghua, who was standing in front of me. After the two of them had lost in the metaphysics exchange competition, they had both wanted to join the Nanyang Taoist faction. They didn't have any sense of national righteousness. However, they were just ordinary people. Their lives had been threatened, and if they didn't join the faction, the taboo in their bodies would have taken effect. Under such circumstances, it wasn't hard to understand why they would put national righteousness as the second priority. Moreover, after they had joined me, they had worked hard to manage my shop. They had helped me a lot. From the perspective of benefits, if I didn't care about Lu Chuanda, would Xie Chenghua still work for me loyally? Thus, Lu Chuanda had to save him. If I wanted to save him, I had to start with the police's attitude. I closed my eyes and thought for a while. Then, my mind became clearer. There was a reason why the police didn't want to let go of anyone. On the surface, it seemed to be for the sake of the big picture. But in fact, the police weren't sure about this case. That was why they were scared and came up with this idea. The only way to make them give up on this idea was to help them figure out the origin of this case. After the police weren't afraid anymore, they would deal with this case differently. Even if they found someone to take charge of this case, they wouldn't find Lu Chuanda. Of course, The premise was that what Lu Chuanda had told me was true. He didn't have anything to do with this case. After thinking it through, I opened my eyes and called Xie Chenghua. I asked him to recall Lu Chuanda's situation and whereabouts before and after the case. Then he would tell me everything. Xie Chenghua was a little surprised. However, when he saw my serious face, he didn't dare to be negligent. After recalling everything, he began to tell me. His cultivation base wasn't low, and he was knowledgeable and had a good memory. It took him more than half an hour to tell me everything that had happened in the past few days, including Lu Chuanda's whereabouts before I came back. He told me again and again. After listening to him, I was sure that Lu Chuanda didn't have anything to do with this case. According to Xie Chenghua, Lu Chuanda always stayed in the shop. Even if he went out, it was to deal with Wang Yongjun's company. Xie Chenghua had only gone out once or twice a month, and he didn't stay for long. Such a small amount of time wasn't enough for him to participate in such a big case. I didn't believe that Lu Chuanda would be involved in this case. Now that it was confirmed, I didn't doubt him anymore. I directly told Xie Chenghua my idea. After listening to me, Xie Chenghua agreed with me. That was why we started to discuss how to help the police investigate this case. Even in the pressure point realm, the Tao Qi in your body can only last for less than 10 minutes. Only those in the glory of consciousness realm can truly use it. Boss, since you were able to fight that hunchback old fox and did not fall into a disadvantageous position, your strength is at least in the late stages of glory of consciousness. It should be easy for your Tao Qi to last for more than an hour. After hearing his explanation, the doubts in my heart disappeared. However, what he said made me dumbfounded. Last time when Xiao Jin scared that hunchback old woman away, I had casually said that I was the one that made Xie Chenghua and Lu Chuanda mistakenly think that my strength was not inferior to that fox spirit's. Now that he had said it so confidently, my heart felt weak. According to what he had said, the Tao Qi in my body was only at the pressure point perfection realm. Using the e-ink pearl would not last more than 10 minutes. No matter how careful I was, 10 minutes was not enough time for me. What should I do? I awkwardly wanted to explain my situation to Xie Chenghua, but then I thought about it. Although my Tao Qi cultivation was not high, I had the true dragon vein, and my recovery speed was top-notch. Moreover, according to my previous experience when I used the true dragon vein to recover the Tao Qi in my body, it would only take 10 minutes. If that was the case, using the e-ink pearl while secretly absorbing the true dragon vein would be enough for me to maintain the effects of the e-ink pearl. With this thought in mind, I quickly asked about the specific effects of the e-ink pearl and how to obtain it from the Mo family. According to Xie Chenghua, the e-ink pearl was very magical. Each e-ink pearl could only be used by one person. Moreover, when it was used, not only would the person's appearance change, but the person's body would also change. This change was completely random. So even the Mo family, who made the e-ink pearl, didn't know what the person would look like after using it. Of course, this randomness only referred to the first time it was used. After using it again, the person's appearance would remain the same as the first time. As for obtaining it, it was simple. The Mo family made a living by selling all kinds of magic tools. Although the e-ink pearl was magical, as long as the price was right, it could be bought. However, the Mo family was very rich. Ordinary magic tools could be bought with money, but rare treasures like the e-ink pearl couldn't be bought with money. One could only use precious talismans, magic tools, and other items to exchange for it. Of course, this was only if the Mo family was interested in it. If they weren't interested, then no matter how precious the item was, if they didn't want to exchange it, then there was nothing you could do. After understanding this, I started to think about what I could use to exchange for the talismans. At first, I thought about making golden light divine talismans and pure yang divine talismans. Ordinary yellow talismans wouldn't work, so I could use shaman energy to make scarlet talismans. However, I quickly rejected this idea. The Mo family was an ancient family, and it was hard to say whether they had a heavenly master or not. Last time, I had been chased by the 10 heavenly masters of the Metaphysics Society because of shaman energy. I didn't want to be chased by the Mo family because of this shaman energy talisman. After rejecting this idea, I reluctantly took out some ordinary yellow golden light divine talismans and pure yang divine talismans. Then I took out the Mount Tai seal that I had gotten from Lu Xinyan. I told Xie Chenghua that the golden light divine talismans and the pure yang divine talismans were part of the 8 great Taoist divine talismans. Even if they were yellow talismans, their value wouldn't be low. Perhaps the Mo family would be interested in them. If they weren't interested, I would add the Mount Tai seal. The Mount Tai seal was one of the inherited magic tools of the Lu family in the capital. Although it didn't have much effect in Lu Xinyan's hands, it was still very valuable. With this, no matter how greedy the Mo family was, it would be enough to satisfy their appetites. Originally, I didn't want to take out the Mount Tai seal. Even if there was a restriction on it, I would be able to remove it one day. Its power would be extraordinary. However, besides the Mount Tai seal, I only had ordinary magic tools. The worst one I had was the square sky fan that Grandpa Ali had asked someone to give me. As my power had increased, the square sky fan's power couldn't satisfy my needs. However, I couldn't make up my mind to exchange it for something else. In the end, I had to give up on the Mount Tai seal. Xie Chenghua nodded and promised that he would take the ink bead back as fast as he could. He even asked me if I wanted to go with him. Since he still had the eye restriction on his body, I wasn't worried that he would run away. Moreover, he used to be the president of the Zhuhai Metaphysics branch, so he should have a lot of connections there. Even if I went with him, this matter would be handled by him alone. I wouldn't be able to help him. I simply shook my head and told him that I still had something to do, so I told him to go alone. Shenzhen wasn't far from Zhuhai. After Xie Chenghua left, I waited in the shop until evening. I thought that he would return the next day. Who would have thought that around 11 o'clock at night, Xie Chenghua would come back? As soon as he entered the shop, he excitedly said, "Boss, old Xie didn't disappoint you. I've brought the ink bead back for you." I hurried to greet him. After asking, I learned that he had gone to Zhuhai. He had quickly used his connections to contact the Mo family. At that time, the Mo family had just made an e-ink bead and were about to sell it. Chapter 286. I wasn't the only one who was shocked speechless. Xie Chenghua couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. I've heard people say that the e-ink bead is extraordinary. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, I know that the rumors are true. Boss, even the person who knows you the most wouldn't be able to recognize you, let alone me. I nodded and rubbed my face a few times. After confirming that there was nothing abnormal, I relaxed. I didn't say anything and closed my eyes to feel my Tao energy. Before Xie Chenghua returned, I had already taken the jade bracelet from Xiao Jin. Now, it was hanging around my neck. After feeling the speed at which my Tao energy was disappearing, I discovered that it was very different from what Xie Chenghua had said. With my Tao energy cultivation, I could only maintain it for about 10 minutes. After confirming it, I grabbed the jade bracelet through my clothes and started to absorb the true dragon chi within. After the true dragon chi entered the heavenly veins, the speed at which it was disappearing slowed down. After a while, it completely disappeared. I smiled. It seemed that my estimation was correct. With the true dragon vein's rapid replenishment, the consumption and recovery of Tao energy would reach a balance. This meant that I could use the e-ink bead for an unlimited amount of time. After solving the biggest problem, everything else was easy. I thought for a while and asked Xie Chenghua to give me one or two of the magic tools that he carried with him. This was also to hide my identity. The magic tools that I carried, whether it was the Fangtian fan or the Yama brush, as well as the golden light and pure Yang divine incantations, had all been shown at the Metaphysics Association. As long as someone saw these things, they would most likely think of me. I originally thought that Xie Qinghua's strength wasn't high, and that he wouldn't have many magic tools. Who would have thought that when he returned to his room on the second floor, he would take out 3 magic tools for me to choose from? I took a closer look. The first one was a very ordinary green hillock sword, similar to the ones used by Taoist priests. The second one was a tiger bone whip. It was made of the spine of a fierce tiger and had a layer of black light on it. It looked very mystical. The third item was a chain. It was hard to tell what material it was made of, but both sides of the chain were black and white. It seemed to contain the yin and yang intent of Yama's brush. It was also extraordinary. Without waiting for me to choose, Xie Chenghua first introduced it to me. This tiger bone whip is made from the third vertebrae of a 100-year-old fierce tiger. It has an innate ability to destroy evil spirits. Moreover, after Tao energy is injected into it, it will automatically release a tiger's roar, shaking people's spirits and destroying their will. It is considered an excellent high-rank magic tool. Also, this yin-yang locket is surrounded by yin and yang qi. It can injure a person's soul, and it's extremely powerful. I casually picked up the 2 magical tools and studied them. I nodded. Xie Chenghua was right. These 2 magical tools were extraordinary. Although they couldn't compare to the Yama brush in my hand, they were much better than the square sky fan. I really didn't expect Xie Chenghua to have such a treasure in his hands. It seems that the position of the Metaphysics Branch's president is quite lucrative. After comparing them, I finally chose the first one, the Azure Hillock Sword. Although the power of the last 2 magical tools was extraordinary, after entering the glorious consciousness realm, I had already started to study the astral steps recorded in the death scripture. When facing an enemy, using the astral steps was enough. The magical tools in my hand weren't important. Moreover, these 2 magical tools were very valuable. They were definitely Xie Chenghua's favorite. I was very grateful that he was willing to take them out, but if it wasn't necessary, it was better not to use them. On the other hand, the Azure Hillock Sword was the most common magical tool. The future of this matter was uncertain. Who knew what kind of trouble might happen in the future? If someone were to investigate, the Azure Hillock Sword definitely wouldn't be able to find anything. With the magical tools settled, it was easy to think of a fake identity. The name Zhang Wenli that I used previously was not bad. These problems weren't difficult. There was only one last problem that I hadn't made up my mind on, and that was how to sneak into the police station. After thinking for a while, I first asked Xie Chenghua if he had any connections in this area. He used to be the president of the Zhuhai branch and had a lot of connections. Perhaps he would have a way. In the end, Xie Chenghua shook his head without hesitation. This case involves too many people. My connections in the past won't be of much use. If he can't do it, then the only way left is through Wang Yongjun. I didn't hesitate and directly called him. I didn't tell Wang Yongjun my plan, but told him that I had a friend who was also a person in the metaphysics world. He was very skilled in feng shui and was very interested in this case. He wanted to cooperate with the police and investigate this case together. I asked him if he had any way for my friend to sneak in, Since I had asked him about this case before, Wang Yongjun also knew the nature of this case. Hearing my words, he was in a difficult position. He hesitated and said, "I'm afraid this matter won't be easy to handle." I tried my best to persuade him. In the end, I even hinted to him that as long as this matter could be handled, no matter what happened in the future, as long as I could help, I would definitely help. Wang Yongjun finally nodded. "I can find the provincial leader who helped me last time. He's in charge of the public security, so he should have a way." After getting his promise, I finally heaved a sigh of relief. Then, I just had to wait for his news. Wang Yongjun's work efficiency had always been high. After more than an hour, he called me and said that the provincial leader wanted to see my friend. He asked me to bring some people with me to meet him. Of course, I couldn't play two roles at the same time. I had to tell him that I was busy and couldn't leave, but I could let my friend go there directly. Wang Yongjun nodded and agreed. Then he asked for the address and said that he would drive there personally. Then we would visit the provincial leader together. Because of this case, the leader was in Shenzhen, which could save us a lot of trouble. Not long after I hung up the phone, Wang Yongjun drove to my shop. At this moment, I was still using the e-ink bead. I had purposely changed my clothes and brought a sword case with me. After putting the Azure Hillock sword in, I followed Wang Yongjun into the car and set off. Along the way, Wang Yongjun kept talking to me. I was worried that I would expose myself, so I pretended to be a man of few words. I only told him that I was friends with Lu Chuanda and Zhou Yi. This time, I had to investigate this case to save Lu Chuanda. Of course, Wang Yongjun didn't doubt me. He drove me all the way to the Municipal Public Security Bureau. In the past 2 years, Wang Yongjun had relied on the locations I had chosen for him to build new factories. He had received a lot of orders, and his business had become bigger and bigger. In the entire business circle of Shenzhen, he could be considered an influential figure. When we arrived at the Municipal Public Security Bureau, he didn't even get out of the car. He just rolled down the window to greet me and swaggered in. After we got out of the car, Wang Yongjun took me to a small office building behind the main building. After we got in, we directly went to the top floor. On the way, Wang Yongjun told me that the provincial leader was called Lu Qingji. He was the third in command in the province. He was in charge of Shenzhen, and the top floor was his temporary office. When we reached the top floor, as soon as we got out of the elevator, 2 armed policemen who were standing guard next to us stopped us. Wang Yongjun made a phone call. Soon, a person who looked like a secretary came. The 2 armed policemen let us go. Then, under Secretary Wang's lead, Wang Yongjun and I went to the only office on the top floor to meet Lu Qingji. Lu Qingji was around 50 years old. With his status, he wasn't considered old. Although he wore a solemn expression, he took the initiative to stand up after we entered. He smiled at Wang Yongjun and asked, "Old Wang, is this the mysterious master you were talking about? He doesn't look that old to me." Wang Yongjun smiled awkwardly. "Master Zhang is indeed young, but his cultivation isn't low." Chapter 287. Of course, these words were just nonsense. Because of my age, Lu Qingji was suspicious of my identity as a metaphysics master. Wang Yongjun couldn't say anything from the side. At this time, if I showed the slightest bit of a guilty conscience, I reckon that this matter would be ruined. Left with no choice, I could only use the tiger's skin and act as arrogantly as possible. Coincidentally, my surname was Zhang. Zhang Yi's name popped up in my head, so I used it. Zhang Yi was a master of the school of vertical and horizontal during the Pre-Qin dynasty. At the same time, He was also a grandmaster in the history of metaphysics. His teacher, Gue Guzi, was even more famous. Not to mention people in the metaphysics world, he was also very famous among ordinary people. As expected, after hearing my words, Wang Yongjun and Lu Qingji were shocked. Lu Qingji didn't answer me, but turned to look at Wang Yongjun. I had added this identity at the last minute, so I didn't tell Wang Yongjun beforehand. However, a person like Wang Yongjun was very clever. When he saw Lu Qingji's eyes move to him, he didn't hesitate and nodded. He forced a smile and said, "Before Master Zhang came, he told me that his family has been in decline for many years, so I shouldn't mention his ancestor's name." Who knew that Master Zhang would say it himself before I said anything? Wang Yongjun's words were very clever. On one hand, he explained why he didn't mention my identity, and on the other hand, he used a joking method to dissolve the harshness in my words, which eased the atmosphere a lot. As expected, after hearing his words, Lu Qingji smiled and said, "It's an honor to meet you." He politely invited me to sit down and started to talk about Zhang Yi and Mr. Gue Guzi. He wasn't a metaphysics person, so he talked about academics and history. I was just making things up, so how could I know their history? Fortunately, I had a good understanding of their achievements in metaphysics. That was why I took the initiative to talk about metaphysics. Lu Qingji listened with great interest and didn't reveal any flaws. After talking for a while, Lu Qingji didn't mention anything about that case. He didn't say whether he wanted me to join the team or not. Instead, he took a jade crane pendant from his neck and carefully held it in his hand, handing it to me. After I received it, Lu Qingji said, "This is a magical tool that I got from the vice president of the Taoist Association, Taoist Master Zhao of the Bayun Temple. Master Zhang, you can take a look at it." I frowned and didn't understand what he meant. I lowered my head to look at the pendant. Originally, when I heard him say that it was an artifact, I didn't take it seriously. I thought it was just a general term for ordinary people. However, when I looked carefully, the light on the crane's pendant was restrained, and its brilliance was faintly discernible. I didn't even need to test it with my Dao Qi to confirm that it was indeed an artifact. I didn't take it seriously when he told me that it was a magical tool. I thought it was just a general term for ordinary people. However, when I looked at it carefully, I saw that the crane pendant had a faint light. I didn't need to test it with my Taoist Qi to confirm that it was a magical tool. After reading it, I was about to return the crane pendant to him and say some compliments. However, Lu Qingji continued. When he gave me this magic tool, Taoist Zhao of the White Cloud Temple gave it a blessing and made the crane inside the pendant flap its wings once. At that time, Taoist Zhao said that once the crane flapped its wings, it could guarantee me a promotion. Not long after that, I was transferred from Beijing to Guangdong. My career took a big step forward. Unfortunately, after I was transferred to Guangdong, I haven't been back to Beijing for more than a year. I wanted to ask Taoist Master Zhao to bless me again, but I didn't have the time or the opportunity. I'm very lucky to have met Master Zhang today. It's fate that brought us together. I wonder if I can ask Master Zhang to bless my crane pendant again. Then he looked at me with his bright eyes. My heart shivered. Lu Yongji wasn't asking for my help. He was testing me. I guessed he didn't believe what I'd said earlier. Or, even if he did believe me, he didn't care. He didn't agree to my request because of what I said. He wanted to use this crane pendant to test me. His meaning was clear. If I could bless the crane pendant once, he would agree to my request. If I couldn't, he wouldn't kick me out. However, I shouldn't even think about it. I didn't say anything and lowered my head to look at the crane pendant. If Lu Qingji said that the crane pendant could flap its wings when it was blessed, it proved that this crane pendant wasn't an ordinary magical tool. There must be something special about it. Indeed, when I turned the crane pendant over, I saw a peony petal engraved on its back. It had a faint fluctuation of Tao energy. I thought for a moment and understood. The peony petal looked like a picture, but in fact, the lines outlined a Tao Qi formation. The red-crowned crane flapping its wings that Lu Qingji had mentioned was probably related to this formation. I tried to move the Tao energy in my body and pour it into the formation. Then I stared at the vivid crane in front of me. Not long after, the crane's wings visibly shook. My guess was right. The so-called crane spreading its wings was the special effect of this formation, and the so-called blessing was naturally to inject enough Taoist qi into the formation. During this period of time, I had injected nearly 1/3 of my qi of the way into the crane, and only then did it move its wings slightly. There was still a long way to go before the crane could spread its wings. Even if I injected all my qi of the way, it would still be difficult for the crane to spread its wings. However, I had the true dragon's vein. If I didn't have a time limit, I could slowly convert my Tao energy and pour it into the formation. Eventually, the crane would flap its wings. With that thought, I lifted my head and said, Taoist Master Zhao of the Baiyun Temple is the vice president of the Taoist Association. His skills have reached perfection. I can't compare to him. Hearing what I said, Lu Qingji's expression darkened. I didn't wait for him to speak and continued with a smile. However, I can barely make a blessing for this magic tool. It's just that my cultivation isn't high enough, so it might take a long time. Lu Qingji's expression softened a little. He asked, How long does Master Zhang need? I calculated in my heart and said, 2 hours is enough. 2 hours was enough for me to absorb 10 times more Tao energy from the true dragon's vein. It was even more than the initial stage of glorious consciousness. It was enough to fill up the formation of this strange magic tool. Lu Qingji was overjoyed and quickly said, 2 hours isn't long. If it's convenient for Master Zhang, why don't you make a blessing in my office? Xiao Wang and I can wait outside to give Master Zhang some quiet space. The change in his attitude was huge. Just now, he looked like he was interrogating me. Now, he even took the initiative to let me use his office. However, after thinking about it, the effects of the crane pendant weren't ordinary. It could affect his career. Making a blessing meant a promotion. Compared to that, giving up his office was nothing. I nodded and agreed. Lu Chuanda had already been captured for more than a day. There was no time to waste. The sooner Lu Qingji's matter was done, the sooner he could calm down. After the two of them left, I sat down cross-legged and held the crane pendant between my palms. I absorbed the dragon energy from the true dragon's vein and converted it into Tao energy to transfer to the crane pendant. After repeating this for more than an hour, I felt that the Tao energy in the formation of the crane pendant was very abundant. The crane's wings were trembling more and more. It wasn't far from spreading its wings. Lu Qingji was an ordinary person, so he couldn't see how abundant the Tao energy was. He could only find some clues from the crane spreading its wings. Thus, it was better for him to see the crane spreading its wings with his own eyes. Thus, I temporarily stopped the transfer of Tao energy and called out to Secretary Wang. Soon, Secretary Wang walked in. It was obvious that he had received the order. After entering, he asked me if I had completed it. After getting an affirmative answer, he hurriedly went out and called Lu Qingji and Wang Yongjun back. The two of them looked excited, especially Lu Qingji. His face was slightly red. He continuously rubbed his hands and hurriedly ran in. I didn't know much about it. Although Lu Qingji was disappointed, he didn't say anything. He smiled and changed the topic. I, on the other hand, didn't have the patience to stay here any longer. I stood up and tactfully said goodbye. After leaving the police station, Wang Yongjun asked me while driving, Master Zhang, there's something I don't know if I should ask. Oh, Wang Yongjun's polite tone surprised me at first. Then I realized that I was Zhang, Wenli, not Zhou Yi. Wang Yongjun wasn't familiar with me, so it was normal for me to be polite. I smiled and said, Brother Wang, if you have something to say, just say it. In addition, Zhou Yi and I are life and death friends. Brother Wang, you don't have to be so polite. Just call me Brother Zhang. Wang Yongjun nodded and called me Brother Zhang. Then, with some worry, he continued, Lu Qingji pushed the matter to tomorrow. Obviously, he still has some doubts about Brother Zhang's identity. I guess he will do some investigation later. He is a member of the public security system. It's easy for him to check a person's identity. So, I want to ask Brother Zhang, are you really Zhang Yi's descendant, the Phantom Valley's successor? I spread my hands. How is that possible? I was just making up an identity in order to calm him down. Wang Yongjun wasn't surprised by my answer. Obviously, he didn't believe me. He was different from Lu Qingji. He wasn't blinded by the prospect of an official career. He knew a lot about metaphysics. Naturally, he wouldn't believe my nonsense. After getting a definite answer, Wang Yongjun said, Brother Zhang, what do you plan to do now? Lu Qingji will definitely check it out. In such a short time, I'm afraid it's a little difficult to make a fake identity. How about this? I still have some friends in Macau. I can ask them to make a fake identity for you. Lu Qingji won't be able to find it there. That's good. Wang Yongjun's words were affectionate. He had thought of the problem that I hadn't thought of, and he had even given me a solution. Whether it was for Zhang Wenli's sake or for Zhou Yi's sake, I was very grateful. I hurriedly thanked him, but he didn't seem to care. He waved his hand and said, Brother Zhang, you're welcome. You're Zhou Yi's best friend, so you're also my best friend. It's not a big deal to help me. As for making a fake identity in Macau, it's not difficult. However, everything there is tightly controlled. I'm afraid it will take some time. You have to delay it for a few days. I hesitated, then shook my head and said, There's no need to go through so much trouble. It doesn't matter if I have this identity or not. Anyway, I said that my family has fallen and I've lived in seclusion since childhood. Where can Lu Qingji find it? Wang Yongjun obviously disagreed with my statement. He said that Lu Qingji could easily find my information by using the public security system.